Welcome to Songwriter Yaps. This is episode 1. Today I'm going to be talking about Jason Isbell and Bob Dylan. So, I got really into Bob Dylan when I was around 15 years old. I have this story I like to tell people about when I first discovered his music. It was right before the pandemic, and I was watching this YouTube video about the Vietnam War by Polyphonic. And in that video, he recommended not one but two songs. Well, I don't know about the second one. I saw it in another video of his, but it was A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall and Hey Mr. Tambourine Man. And so I started watching. While I was watching the video, I had this idea that I would download both of these songs on my phone. And so I used to go walk to school. It was about an hour commute, so I would want a lot of music to listen to. And what I didn't know at the time, though, was that both of those songs are well over 2 minutes long. I thought I was going to get little guitar ditty, but instead I got these long-winded and very dense musical expressions of, very honest, but yet very surreal-ish writing. And that was the first time where it really clicked in my head about how songwriting could be more, or in fact, just like how people can come up with songs. I remember before I listened to a lot of the Beatles and, definitely their psychedelic era. The album I think I listened to the most was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And I wasn't really well musically trained in the sense of I never really tried to learn instruments in the sense that I wanted to study theory and master pieces. I took a little bit of piano, but then I kind of got bored with that, so I didn't really continue with it. And then I did percussion. Well, I initially wanted to play saxophone, but that didn't really pan out, so I started playing drums, and there I kind of felt a little bit empty about it. And the main thing I felt empty about, though, is that all these people, they're creating these extravagant pieces, and I don't really know how, like, someone like me could do that. I listened to, I don't know, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds for hours on end, and it never really occurred to me that the song started out as a guy talking on a piano, or how a song like I Get Help with My Little Friends started out as a guitar riff. Those parts didn't really connect to my dot. No, I didn't really connect the dots in my head about it. It wasn't until I listened to Bob Dylan where I kind of realized, or well, the culture shock went upon me that, all these songwriters, they kind of start out all in the same place and they're all kind of like creating these new worlds in their own head and with their mind. And so there, it was kind of like, wow, not only is somebody able to do this, but also like, I could do this too. So that was like my first initiation, not only to the world of Dylan, but also into this world of creation that really anybody could do it. But like, then I got all attached to the poetry aspect of it. I got really into Bob Dylan, and then I got really into Leonard Cohen. And both of their songs kind of ruminated with me for, I think, the almost the entirety of my high school experience. I remember in particular, I really loved the record, Leonard Cohen's Songs of Love and Hate. And that record kind of put me for a loop. I listened to a song like Avalanche, and I thought, wow, how could the guy do it? But anyway, fast forward to about, I would say, the end of 2024 and the beginning of 2025, I start looking for a new artist, at least somebody else to sink my teeth into. I would get really into John Prine in the 2024, but I don't know, a lot of his music, I would say that the early stuff really resonated with me, but when I started listening to like How Lucky or even Tree of Forgiveness, I wouldn't say those records are bad by any means, but they definitely weren't like satisfying, something I was looking for, at least when it came to, I don't know, something more contemporary. I think that John Prine and Dylan get compared a lot, even though I do think they're highly different writers. Dylan definitely well versus an abstract thought, and I think that what I'll go to later on when I'm talking about the comparison between Isbell and Dylan is that Dylan is able to create these intimate moments out of these wide array of ideas. I think one of his best songs that's able to do this is Tomorrow is a Long Time. I think that song's a very personal song, but I also think that it uses a lot of abstract ideas to get to that personal edge of it. It reminds me a lot of how somebody once described it as that if you're trying to talk about the universe and put it into a cup, you fail. But if you talk about a cup, then you're able to put the whole universe into it. And that's kind of, I don't know. I think Dylan is always just putting the universe in a cup and doing it very successfully. But back to what I was talking about with the John Prine is that I started listening to a lot of his music, and obviously Prine has a bit more of a country leaning. I know that he has more respect and love in that field than anything else. And so when John Prine came up, there was another artist who kind of lingered in the shadows per se, and that was Jason Isbell. I think I got really into Isbell's music right in the middle of 2025, and when I was watching this documentary on YouTube, The Western Side, and he made this really great piece on him. And then I was able to be like, whoa, this guy's like really underneath my nose about everything that he's doing. I listened to his Decoration Day, that record, and I got introduced by the Drive By Truckers, and those guys are just phenomenal. Obviously the Isbell era is kind of like a critical high point, but I do also think that some of his the records that they made afterward, especially around the early 2010s, the mid 2010s, are also pretty great. But that's not what this video is about. Uh, I started listening. I listened to the entirety of Southeastern, and then I listened to a lot of Weather Vanes, which was the most recent album. Before I listened to Boxes in the Snow, and then I was completely caught for a loop. I think that Isbell does something phenomenal that I guess is Dylan-ish, but I don't think is really what I find it really hard to compare the two artists because of this simple fact. Isbell is great at painting portraits and vignettes about people, and he's able to precisely talk about it in a way that not only is true to his experience, but is also kind of true to this universal thing that we're all going through. I think that Isbell is able to pinpoint these characters that he has in his song to create this like wide universe, so that I think everybody's part of it. I don't know. It just sounds a little pretentious, I won't lie, but like that's just kind of how I see it. And I think that Dylan, in the way that he writes, I think that he kind of opposes this notion of writing highly detailed characters. Not saying that he doesn't in the at all. Obviously, he tells really great character stories when he wants to. Obviously, the Ballad of Hollis Brown is a great example of this. Another one that I think is that's really good is what song is it? The song Isis, but that's more of a story song, so it's not really a character study per se in the traditional sense, even though you do know a lot about the narrator through the song. Hurricane is another great example of character songs that are able to pinpoint these stories. But I think that what Isbell does in direct contrast is that he always tries to go deeper into who he is and not ever about what the world is about. I'm not saying that he doesn't do that either. Obviously, he does in so many other songs. What Have I Done to Help, or more abstract ideas, or The Cumberland Gap is another song where it's like, yeah, he's relating to his father's experience, but then he talks about life and how it's like the Cumberland Gap is going to swallow you whole. He does that. So I think that that's also like a really big thing that is like so different from those artists that I feel as though that it's hard to really pinpoint them together, especially when it comes to like who's the better songwriter, or like is it really that the continuous tradition of it all. But I think that Isbell is definitely a man of the tradition and continues into it. I think that there's a big thing about songwriters who are imitating and not really expanding. I don't ever. I know that I think that big criticism on Isbell is that he doesn't really change the wheel, but I think that the whole point is that the wheel isn't supposed to be changed. I think that the whole point is that you just add and redo the wheel, you know. And so I think that's kind of really key to what he does. And I'm not even trying to say that like it's bad for songwriters to try to reinvent songs, or songwriters trying to make people rethink about what songs are. I tell you, there's a lot of artists who definitely do that and definitely do that to the best of their abilities. One artist that comes to mind is like Tom Waits, and just the way he wails into the microphone and like just like creates a whole new experience that you don't even know that you wanted or needed at the time. But you know, it's good stuff. You should go listen to that. But overall, I just think that what Jason Isbell does versus what Bob Dylan does is that Dylan is trying to tap into the universal, and that basically, I would say that his songs are basically him trying to explain the world. Meanwhile, I would say Isbell's songs are about the world, like him explaining us in the world. I guess I don't know. I would say that I wouldn't say it's high concept per se, because I think that a lot of the greatest parts about both of those songwriters, especially when they're at their best abilities, are able to make it so relatable fundamentally. One of them, you know, obviously one of the most famous Bob Dylan songs, if not the most famous one, "Don't Think Twice, It's All Right," is just a very simple breakup ballad. It's not that hard to understand. Ain't no use to turn on your light, babe, the light I've never known. Like these are universal concepts constructed in a somewhat mundane manner, but I don't think you need to do anything else about it. But I definitely do think that Dylan does very much want to voyage the edge of what is a song and what's a novella. You listen to a song such as The Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowland, and you kind of think, what's going on? What's going on here? What are we talking about? But I think that's also kind of important too, is that when you're trying to create like something that's groundbreaking or trying to redo fundamentals, you should be able to feel confident enough in your uh, in not only your writing capabilities but also into what it is that you are trying to have in a song. I don't know. That sounds a little long-winded. I won't lie. But meanwhile, Isbell, I think he definitely tries to stay away from trying to do that. I don't think that Isbell has songs that are purposely trying to confuse his audience, and I don't think that I think that Isbell kind of stays away from doing. I wouldn't say groundbreaking, but definitely tries to break what songs are supposed to be. I think that his songs are very tight, and that's also a big difference I see between him and Dylan is that his songs are definitely just like they are they're trying to they're trying to be these condensed stories and trying to say, "Hey, I see you." Meanwhile, Dylan's like, "Go look over there" type stuff, and that's also just another thing that's just like I admire so much about Dylan's writing, but also it's kind of I think what holds him back for what it is that trying to get people more accessed into him. Another because one of my I don't know opinion I have is that I think that Dylan's Blonde on Blonde, which I think is one of my personal favorites records of his, and obviously one of the most critically acclaimed ones, is probably like some of the worst stuff to get people into Dylan. He goes into too much abstract ideas. His vocals definitely are an acquired taste, to say the least. But besides that, it just there's this feels like this emotional dissonance that's there, that's not really expressed in Isbell's work. Paul Simon famously said that Dylan is a when he sings, it's like he's saying two things at once. He's telling you his deepest secret, but then he's lying to you at the same time. Meanwhile, Isbell is kind of all earnesty and he's very honest, and you can collect a lot of things from him. But yeah, I guess that's all I really have to say. I think they're both phenomenal songwriters, and I do definitely think that they have a big part into what it is that I like to do in my songwriting and what I think is important versus what I don't think is important. I guess, like, I don't know, this video is just my yapping about songwriters, but yeah. All right.